not live in my district who also have contributed in the past to my campaign. They all have the goal of good government for Kansas in mind, and I don't see any problem with them contributing to a candidate that they believe in.
I would repeat with what Linda just said. I agree. I've lived in 3 other states, and I have a lot of enthusiastic friends and family in those states who are supportive of me, and so yes, there are contributions from outside the district.
No contributions, period.
Yes, I have contributions from outside the district. Like all of us up here, our statements will be posted publicly come late July, early August. I am proud of many contributions from within the district. I'm proud of many people who decided to support me from outside the district here in the state. But yeah, there's no particular one I'd run away from, and I guess all of us will have to reveal that here in the end of the month anyway, so yeah.
This next question will start with Linda Gallagher. Ireland just banned fracking, joining France, Germany, and Bulgaria as an informed voter. Right there. Will Kansas also ban fracking?
To be honest, I'm not sure Kansas will do it, but I certainly hope we will have that discussion. I personally need to learn a lot more about that. I don't serve on the Energy Committee, but it's no coincidence that just this weekend I was talking with a friend of mine who grew up in Oklahoma, and she said there was not one earthquake her entire childhood when she grew up in Oklahoma, and now they have I don't know how many hundreds every year. It's no coincidence. I think that that's happening now with fracking there. So certainly that is something we need to get a handle on.
I can't predict the future. I don't know if we would ban it, but I would like to learn more about it. I would probably lean towards some kind of measures to restrict it. I think it has big consequences for our children's future and what fracking does for our environment.
I don't know enough about it either scientifically. I don't want to rely on anecdotal information because we could make a lot of very poor decisions doing that. So leave an open mind, see where the science goes. I must tell you that I do think this country is safer when we can be more energy independent. That's the other side of it. So let's look at the science. If we're poisoning communities, absolutely, we need to find ways then to control it or eliminate it. But basing it on anecdotal information, I'm not going to do that.
I think I agree with what most of everyone said there. I do sit on the Energy Utilities Committee, and that's actually something we have not discussed yet. I think we'd have to review the science behind it. I think we'd have to review the economic impact. I think there are very likely reasonable restrictions on it. Like, I don't think you should be able to frack 20 feet from someone's house probably, because that's going to directly affect them. But I don't know enough about this issue to say what is good, bad, where we're at on it. But I do think it is something that needs to be reviewed. And we need to make sure we have best practices in place and that people, especially in communities around it, are not being negatively affected. If it is actually directly causing earthquakes that some people are theorizing out of Oklahoma, then we do need to address it sooner than later, because that's a very serious concern, because that's a public health risk to many people, even as far here as Kansas City.
I don't know enough about fracking, but I have family and I have friends who have family in Oklahoma and who are all saying the same thing, that they're feeling that since the fracking started, they've had many more earthquakes. I would also want to know the environmental impact that fracking would have before, really being able to say whether I'm for or against.
We have time for a couple more questions. This next one will start with Laura Smith-Everett. What policies would you support in order to help schools address mental health issues?
The biggest thing about education that's a lot of outside of education people don't see is how much of the things we do are intertwined. And so I would be in support of a lot of measures to get counseling and social workers in schools, because as some of you know, the State Board of Education is raising the standards in Kansas, and with that means we need to be reaching higher academic goals. When you can free up a teacher who would otherwise have to be serving as a counselor and a social worker, you allow them to focus on academics, and you allow certified personnel to focus on things that they have an expertise in. And I think it's really important that the state look at multiple ways to provide that to the public schools and also to our universities, where students go and they're a little more complex when they get that age and they need help.
I'm glad I'm not getting paid for moving this microphone around, because I don't think I'm getting paid. Yes, as I said earlier, I believe mental health in this country as a whole is just abysmal. We treat it as relative to other diseases and so on that might drive us to the doctor. Mental health is just not treated the same way, and I think that's wrong. We need to find a way to aggressively get at and get people the help that they need, particularly the poor. So in the schools, I'm okay with that additional mental health counseling, but I don't want it to be an excuse for keeping kids that are in the schools that need to be segregated from their classmates because of maybe violent behavior or things that they've posted on Facebook are just so extreme. We need to remove those kids from the schools so that other kids can learn.
I believe the first step is getting more counselors and social workers in our school. I think a priority, and I realize the school districts have done the best. House District 17 is only in Shawnee Mission, which I guess makes sense as we're here, but there are a lot of people who represent multiple districts, but I think Shawnee Mission has done a fantastic job of taking the additional funding we've been providing them and putting it and making a priority of counselors and social workers in our schools. We need to get them more funding so they can continue to ramp that up. I think our current board is doing a fantastic job prioritizing well and being very transparent about where the money is going, and that only encourages me to want to make sure that they have more money to reach these services. But number one is we need more counselors, we need more social workers in our schools able to deal with this. I think that is the best way we can address it right now.
I believe we need more preventive care. There are children who are who are in pre-K, and you will know, or someone is reporting that the child's having problems. It starts there, but it could also start in Head Start. So the earlier the intervention, the better. And we don't have a good system of that at all. I also, feel like I need to say too that because a person may have a mental illness doesn't make them violent. People with a mental illness tend to be much more victims of violence than they are of them actually committing violence. And so I think once we kind of get our heads out of that, we can really look at much more prevention in the school system. Having social workers and counselors, absolutely. The teachers are doing all of that right now, and they don't. Also, people who are learning to become a teacher.
I also think that we definitely need to have more social workers and counselors in schools. I know a lot of parents in Shawnee Mission this year asked the district to put one social worker in every school, and I would love to see that happen. I also know there isn't enough funding to do that right now. I'm hoping we can get to that point soon. The problems of society are being laid at the doorstep of our schools, and teachers and school staff are being asked to deal with things that they aren't trained to do. And so we do need those certified people to do that. My daughter was a student teacher in the Shawnee Mission District in a 4th grade classroom this year, and the stories she told me about some of the children that in that classroom were heartbreaking. And she's not sure she wants to teach now because of the difficulties and the stress she saw that it put on teachers. Trauma has long-lasting horrible effects for children, and it manifests itself in many ways, and kids these days are just having more trauma for a variety of reasons.
This next question, this will actually be our final question. This will start with Jim Eschrick, and I'm going to combine a couple of questions that I received and paraphrase a bit. The recent decision in the school finance case calls for infusing more dollars in K-12 funding to account for inflation. When and if the legislature does respond to that decision, how will you want districts to spend this money?
Well, listen, go back to what I said earlier. I don't think, as a legislator, that I would have supported acquiescing to the Supreme Court's demand or mandate or dictate, whatever you want to call it, to spend X number of dollars. That's not their role. So I'm not real thrilled with an additional $100 million. Now, the Kansas City Star, of all places, 2016, said that $600 million would be extraordinarily aggressive and start to push against other programs in the budget. Now, if we're going to be really transparent, not just about how we do our business in the legislature, but being honest with voters about the tax implications and the budget implications for this, I think we're not doing our job. So how to spend that additional money, I'm not convinced that I would go along with it.
I think it's time we get it done. The Supreme Court has given us very clear direction, say the amount you've allocated is enough once you account for inflation over the phase-in. We can calculate that out. It's time for us to get it done. It's time for us to resolve this court case. In terms of spending, everyone says, I want it in the classroom, but the vast majority of it always is in the classroom. Only 5% of the school's budgets are administrative. I'm very proud that the Shawnee Mission School District is a highly efficient district, and that of the new money we gave them, and our school board member here could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 80% of the new revenue we gave them went to teacher salary increases and hiring counselors and social workers. Seeing things like that just only encouraged me to want to provide more funding for them in those cases because they are spending it very effectively. But those are the continued areas I'd like to see it going towards. But I also have a strong faith in our board to make the right decisions, as they are more educated than us, and they are duly elected by the people to make those decisions.
I would like to hear from the school board as to how they see the money being able to be spent. But I also would like for the money to be spent in counseling and in social workers in the schools. Again, teachers need to be able to teach and not do everything else that is pressed upon them.
As I said earlier, I think we need more social workers and counselors, and so I'd like to see the funding go toward that, as well as increasing salaries for teachers. We are losing teachers at an incredible rate in Kansas. They're getting more and more discouraged, in part because of pay, and that needs to be improved. I also think we need to spend more money on special education. We spent a lot of time this year debating how much money to put into the school funding bill for special ed, and we knew we fell short, and that needs to be addressed. I'm glad that we have clear direction from the court, and I am confident that the legislature, when we return in January, will be able to appropriate the necessary funds out of existing revenues, in part because today we learned that the 2018 fiscal year revenues were $318 million over projections. That will help us fund schools.
I don't think it's the place of a state legislator to dictate what local schools do with their funds, but I think the part of a state legislator is to ensure that there is enough money for the school districts to take care of all of the students in a school. And I think it's a really important component of this funding is that we don't tie it to something that goes up as the costs for school districts go up, such as inflation. We are really going to find ourselves back here in a few years. So it's really imperative to me that we do that inflation component and we move on and we get out of the courts. But I think it's really important from a state standpoint. We're ensuring there is enough funding for our at-risk students, our rural students that have, districts have a whole different set of circumstances in western Kansas that they think of, and our special ed students. And that's the job of a state legislator, is to make sure that we have enough funding for all those groups.
Well, it's nearly 8 o'clock, so I want to thank the 5 candidates running for the seats in the 17th and 23rd State House districts. Give them a round of applause. And I thank the Shawnee Area Council PTA for hosting this event and preparing the questions and preparing the topics and inviting the candidates. Catherine, did you want to say anything?
Oh, just thanks to Kyle and thanks to all of you and thanks to all for coming.
And I'm under the impression that the candidates will be staying after, so if you want to meet with them and talk with them personally face to face, they'll be around for a while. But thank you all for coming and have a good evening.